Hey, travel creators, welcome back to the Travel Creator Podcast. I'm so thankful that you tune in every single week. It seriously brings me so much joy. And what's going to bring you even more joy is listening to this episode with Dianni. Dianni is a creative, she is a friend, and she is someone who will give you fantastic advice that will help you advance your creator journey. Without further ado, less from me, more from Dianni.
My name's Dianni. I am a full-time traveler. I've been nomadic for the past 6 years at this point. Started off with a backpacking trip to Southeast Asia. My one-way flight to India was the beginning of it all. I like to say that I blew my life up, which is what I did. I was living with a partner. Was working various jobs as someone in their early 20s and had just graduated college. We had an apartment together, like all the things. And I was like, actually, I'm just gonna self-implode and I really want to go traveling. So the nomadicness started that long ago. The past 2 years, I've been a digital nomad, added the digital onto the nomad part because before it was a lot of other things that I was doing. But now I'm a freelance podcast producer and I produce my own show called While She's Away, where I talk to other women who are traveling the world. And the kind of thing that I like to say is that I'm just helping other women live their best lives traveling around the world, of whether you want to become a digital nomad or you just want to backpack on a budget, whatever the case may be. That's what my podcast is for. But yeah, I have my own podcast and as a freelancer, help other people create their podcasts. I do the editing, production, all those things. And yes, that's me. That's a general understanding of me.
I am just curious of my own curiosity. Where is of all the places you've been, a place you would never recommend? You don't have to say why. Just, actually, I did not have a good time here for whatever reason.
That's a good question. Actually, I do have an answer. Samara, Costa Rica. And that's where I was somewhat recently. And I was supposed to be there for 6 months and kind of settle in. And I stayed for a month and a half because it's just kind of been overrun by like Americans. I feel like so many people before I went were like, oh my God, it's so beautiful. You're going to love it. And now I'm like, I'm scared to say this out loud because I don't want anyone to be like, wait,
I get it.
I loved it there.
I get it. It is scary to admit.
Yeah,
but it's going to come for you.
Yeah, that was not my favorite place. It just wasn't aesthetically my favorite. Just a lot of tourists didn't have that local vibe. And then later on, I moved to the other side of Costa Rica, like the Caribbean side, and fell in love with it over there. So Samara just wasn't my vibe.
Well, thank you for admitting that to the internet. That was really brave.
Don't hate me. If you love it there, it's okay. We're just different people.
Yes. Okay, a more legit question now for you. And you can use your experience both as somebody who is freelancing. What are some of your best tips or advice for negotiating? Maybe it's pricing or just like walking into negotiations with clients, if you have any, because my target audience are people who are travel creators who have already been working with brands consistently or are aspiring to or are like about to.
Yeah.
And so they're in the headspace and process of, one, I don't even know what to charge, which is like a whole nother conversation. But once they get beyond that, because a lot of them have already taken that leap of working with brands, what are your thoughts or advice, if you have any, on negotiations?
Yes. Okay. So I'll take this from the side because you said your audience is the people who are working with brands themselves. So I won't even do this as a freelancer. I'll do it as like the creator myself, as having worked with some brands and having had sponsorship for the podcast and things like that. I think when I first started, I was just happy to be receiving them. So I wasn't like really negotiating anything because I didn't really have an idea of how to price myself. And I think the biggest thing that helped me, and I know you're like pricing yourself is a separate issue, but that I think it goes hand in hand because it's like, how do I negotiate if I don't even know what to price myself at? But I think the biggest thing that kind of helped was having other content creator friends and like community and being able to come to them and be super transparent with each other of, hey, this is what they're offering. Like, I've worked with a brand that's similar and this is what they offered. And having that sounding board when you're new in the space of people who have a bit more experience than you and surrounding yourself with people who have more experience than you helps you a lot with being able to turn back around to the brand and be like, hey, here's what I'm willing to work at, or these are my rates. But I think one tip with negotiating is when they do come to you and ask what your specific rates are, instead of like right off the bat giving what your rates are, I, without asking, like, what is your budget, like to see what their budget is without directly asking. Because I think if you directly ask, it can maybe come off a little bit like inconfident. Okay, she doesn't know what to price herself at. So
Mhm.
maybe instead of like, what deliverables are you looking for, or something
Mhm.
like that, because then it's, are they looking for one video per se? If we're talking about like reels or TikToks or something, are they looking for one video? Are they looking for a package of multiple? Are they looking to sponsor one podcast episode? Are they looking to do multiple? And getting a gauge of what it is they're looking for. And if you give just, hey, here's my price for this, they already know what your price is for that one podcast episode or that one video. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
So if you ask what it is that they're looking for, you can maybe craft a package more to what you're willing to offer and see if they go for that. And I think I've learned with negotiating that if I say a price and it maybe even feels a little bit low to me, but I say it because it's like, I know they'll say yeses and they immediately say yes without any pushback or negotiating, then I've priced myself too low. And then
Mhm.
maybe in the next instance, I'll go a bit higher on that. And so I think it can be a little bit of trial and error, definitely. But those are the kind of things that I like to keep in mind because it can be hard to negotiate when when you're new and a brand's offering you money and you're like, oh my God, I'm getting paid to create content.
Mhm.
You can sometimes not negotiate, but you should.
Yeah, that's true. I think you're right. Like, it's so easy for people to get caught up in the idea that people are giving you money for like your art essentially. And it's like,
Yeah.
hell yeah, give me money for that. But you do have to stand your ground a little bit because the brands who really want you will pay for it. And there's a lot of them out there. I love this because here Dianni is telling us use your network. So there's probably other creators that you are friends with and know who maybe have worked with brands that you want to work with. What's stopping you from reaching out to those friends to be like, hey, how did you get this gig with this brand? Or what was it really like working with them? I also love the piece of advice she offers saying that when a brand or someone you want to work with asks you how much it costs for your art, really, you should instead ask them what's your budget because then they can stop you from wasting your time trying to negotiate with somebody who is out of your league in a bad way. I'm huge on this, but what do you feel like has been such a big impact, either in your podcasting world or in any way, that has helped you build a community, whether it's online? Well, really, let's go the online route.
It's been mainly online. I didn't realize how many people I had in my online travel-esque community
Mm-hmm.
until like I'll be like, "Oh, I'm gonna meet up with this person," because then people will reach out when you're in the same area. Oh, I'm hanging out with this person, or I'm reaching out to this person, and they're like, "Who is that?" And I'm like, "I met them online," and I just didn't realize how many times I was saying I met them online, but it's a lot of people. I think the beautiful thing about having a podcast is like you have to reach out to potential guests and those potential guests become, if you like click and vibe while you're recording
Mm-hmm.
together, you follow each other, you stay in contact, you comment on each other's socials, and that just like naturally develops into a relationship. So that was one thing, reaching out to people to have on the podcast, and those become relationships. And just like not being afraid to slide into people's DMs and comment on things has been like a really natural thing. If someone posts something that you really enjoy, like compliment them on it.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe they'll come to your page and find things it's that they like, and you guys will just kind of like naturally create a conversation in the DMs. I feel like that might sound icky and be like, okay, so you want me to just slide into the DMs? I'm like, but it's honestly a lot more natural of a process than you
Yeah.
think because they posted some content that was actually really helpful to you and you're letting them know that. And you're in the same niche. So it can just naturally flow that way, which has happened to me a lot of times. So between the podcast and having guests on, naturally connecting with people online. And then I know you said online, but I think like this in-person thing could carry over into online is conferences and events and things of that sort are a really great space for that. And so I've been to, when I first started, before I'd even started traveling, I'd attended Women's Travel Fest because it was in New York.
Mm,
And those are also really great spaces to connect face to face. So it's not just in the DMs or online, but that
mhm,
community, I think, plays such a big role and is so helpful and supportive, even if it's just I've facilitated calls with some like different travel podcasters before where it's like, hey, what are you working on? What are you going through? And I know we've been on like a call together too. And
mhm.
sometimes it's so helpful to just be able to chat about where you're at as a creator, as an entrepreneur, as anything. And I think a lot of other people are looking for those opportunities as well. So it's not that weird to just reach out. It's really not.
It really isn't. I had someone say to me recently, "Don't you get how are you finding clients? Don't you get nervous reaching out to people on the internet?" And I'm like, No,
It's so normal
like,
now.
no, this is like how this whole thing works. This is the whole bit is
Literally.
this. And 90% of the people on the internet are great, and 10% of them are not.
Yeah.
And it is shocking that so many of the people that you can find in your community are so awesome. And it's okay if you are a good person, you're going to find good people. And
Mhm.
that's the whole bit.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's other, like, you can join Facebook groups. There's always Facebook groups where that's community.
Yeah.
There's paid groups as well if you're really looking to for a specific niche or more
Hmm.
content related in that community. So if you're not up for just sliding into people's DMs, there are spaces designated for this, for community that you can join. Like Facebook groups are free. They're not always amazing, but there's always some gems in there where you can find great
Yeah.
spaces to connect with other people.
Definitely. Most of the people that we meet and interact with in our online community are good people because I believe that what you put out into the world is going to come back to you, essentially karma, but in the sort of like law of attraction realm. Whereas if you're going to be like a big asshole, people are going to be a big asshole back to you. But if you're a nice person who genuinely wants to learn and connect and grow with other people, you're going to find people who want to do that with you as well. I have made such amazing friends and community online. It's seriously changed not only I would say some of my habits to be a more successful business owner, but to be a better creative. It's amazing and to be able to lean on people, not only to send funny memes, but to ask real genuine advice from is invaluable. And that's why I'm so gung ho about building community. And so I've actually taken my DIY content repurposing course that I've been mentioning in this podcast and I sent it out into the world. And over 200 people downloaded that course, which is insane. And what I decided, since I'm so passionate about content repurposing and community building, is to blend the two. So I am actively building a program that walks you through with me live how to do the course. So it's not just something you've downloaded and you never touch it again, but you do it together in a small cohort of other students who are creators and business owners. And together we create community and we grow and we learn and we get better at our content so we can get back to doing the things in our business that require our expertise. I'm actively building in public this community on my Instagram right now where I share daily updates of what the heck I'm doing every day to build this community. So if you want to follow along and see what I'm including in this community, what's in it for you, why you should consider joining, head on over to Travel Content Writing and send me a DM and let me know what you think about it. I'll only be accepting 10 people into the first cohort of students, and I really want one of them to be you. All that to say, community building is one of the most important things I have ever experienced in business growth. And I know that it can be life-changing for you as well. And I'm sure you've experienced some of that too. So keep doing it. Whatever you do, keep building community. Would you ever consider going on like a retreat with like, do you know what I mean?
Yes, I know. Yeah.
Like influencers? I'm just dying to know.
I That's such a good question. I don't know. I don't know. Just because I think if it was like very specific to something that I wanted to learn, and then it's, oh, we're going to be talking about X, Y, and Z on this retreat, whatever, and there's going to be workshops by these people, and I'm like, oh, that's something I've been really wanting to dive into, whatever, then like maybe. But I think personally, as someone who's done so much solo traveling, usually these retreats I feel like are like outside of what I'm willing to pay. So it's I could go to that place. And of course you're paying for like the community aspect and the learning
Hmm.
and all of those things. But I think a part of me is I'm a long time budget traveler. I'm like, I could go to X place for a quarter of that cost. So I'm not gonna do that. So yeah, I guess that's my take on those. I don't know. What about you? I'm
That
curious.
is literally my first thought whenever I see group trip. Whenever I see anybody I follow posting about a group trip, I click on the link because I'm like, let's see how much this
Yeah,
costs. Because I'm like, there's no way in hell I just know it does make me sick to think about spending that much money to get to a place when I know I could get myself there for
exactly.
or not that much money.
Exactly.
And I do understand. I mean, like the community, sure, is invaluable, but I don't know if I can do it simply because I know that it doesn't have to be like that.
No, 100%. Wait, okay, wait. I feel so strongly about this. I not so strongly, but like I've been thinking about this because it feels like everyone and their mother's doing group trips right
Oh,
now.
yes, it does.
And it's some people that I genuinely follow and like their content. So I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, let me look. And then some of them are obviously marketed as more like budget friendly. So I'm
Hmm.
like, okay, let me see what this pricing is. But they're all at least like 1,500 and it's for a
Hmm.
week and it's not even including flights. Like the longest is 10 days and I'm like I could go to that place for 1,500 for the entire month. And it's like it doesn't
Yeah.
it just and of course you said the community aspect, but I think feasibly I can't get behind the financial aspect. And then I start to think question like okay, they're marketed as, oh my goodness, you're gonna make friends for life. But what if you don't get along with everyone? You're not, there's no guarantee that you're gonna click. And so it's okay, at a hostel, at least I can pick and choose the people I want to hang out
Yeah.
with.
Yeah.
But if you're on this group tour together, group trip, you have to hang out with these people. And I
Hmm.
think having been an independent traveler for so long, I like being able to do my own thing. What if I don't want to do that? Or what if I do want to do this? Or like
Yeah.
the restaurants is this and everyone's going here, but I want to go over there. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
So I
I
think
hate
I'm a
being
little
told
too
what to
selfish.
do,
Yes.
and I don't want to pay to spend money to be told what to do. Which I guess is,
Right.
yeah, I spent years in school, so that was essentially the same thing. But I know there's also like, I feel as though I have the type of personality where I could end up in a cult in the best way possible. And this feels like a gateway drug to culthood. Some of
It
these
is a
like
cult. Oh my God.
group trips. Yeah,
Wait. Now that you say that, I'm like, absolutely yes.
it is. Let's gather a group of women and go into the jungle for days on end and talk about how we can make money from our devices. That's MLM culty stuff.
It's culty. It's 100%. It's 100% culty. And I like to think that I wouldn't be vulnerable. That I'd be like, Tiana,
Oh
you're
yeah.
you're smarter than that. You're like you
No,
can.
I'm not.
I
I'm not.
Yeah, no, I always click the link. I it's like the curiosity gets the best of me. Like I want to
Yeah,
know what's this price at? What does it
absolutely.
include? What do I
Hmm.
get? All the
Hmm.
things. It's definitely it's definitely giving culty. Like everyone's in white dresses and like
Yeah,
you're sitting in circles holding hands and chanting prayers. Like I could see it turning real culty real fast. And it's disguised as like
absolutely.
spirituality. Like I see it. I see it. I see it.
Oh my gosh. Now I'm like, maybe I should go on one just to see what it's like.
Should we? Should we just like just
Maybe.
invade and like
Maybe we should
undercover
do
it?
it for journalism.
And then the end of it, on the under of it, we could do like a podcast episode and just be like, so this is what we found out.
Yes.
This is what
Okay. At
happens.
the end of every day on the retreat, we'll go in the bathroom and just take a little voice memo of, okay, did you see the way she looked at me? That was crazy. She tried to get me to wear this white dress and like hold this ribbon and dance in a circle. And I can't.
I can't. I just couldn't do it. I just couldn't do it. Oh my God. So real.
Oh
So
my God.
real.
Okay, I'm glad I'm not the only one who thinks that way about group trips because I just wondered. I just didn't know if everyone was like, yes, this is amazing, or have some skeptical to it, especially because when people are trying to teach you something, it's okay, cool, great, let's just go
Yeah.
do it in this beautiful place. And I didn't know
Yeah.
if people were blinded by that, but
I think there's a difference between just like group trips and retreats because it's like retreat is one you're
mhm.
going to for, a female community. Usually you're like journaling and doing all the things and spending time together and it's a lot
Mhm.
more woo woo and it's okay. If you're needing that right now in your life, like you go ahead. I might succumb to. I'm talking all this shit. I might succumb to it at some point and be the one going on
Oh no,
the
absolutely. I'll be
retreat.
posting photos soon
Yeah,
from
right.
my
Like, oh my God, look at me. It's having so much fun. But then I think group trips is a separate thing. And I think group trips wouldn't be for me just because I don't like being told what to do, like we were saying, and I'm very an individual traveler. But I think they're really great for someone who's never done it before and is looking
Mhm.
to go somewhere solo for the first time. Because that's another thing. I don't get how they're marketed as solo trips because you're not by yourself. But I get maybe you're arriving to the destination alone.
So
I
funny.
understand them for people who've never done it before. I think for people who are new to it, yes, it can be absolutely worth it and beautiful. And honestly, the 1,500 they're going to spend on that week is probably more affordable than how they'd be able to do it on their own,
Mhm.
just because they maybe don't know the ways to do it cheaper.
Yeah.
So,
Well, now
so
I
it
feel
depends.
mean.
It was both of us. It was both of us. But I think it depends. It depends. It depends.
Yeah, I think it is a great gateway drug to traveling for sure. Yeah, just don't get sucked in and come back. Come back from that. Okay, that's all I have to say about group trips. Okay, from a creator's perspective, you are a creative person and have worked with brands and things like this. What makes a good ad? What would make a brand happy, I suppose, in your experience that you've sent and they've been like, cool? Do they
Yeah.
have any specific feedback as well?
So I can answer this as someone who, like, last week just had a meeting with a brand to sponsor an episode of the podcast for
Oh
later this
my
month.
gosh,
So
amazing.
just some little back insider, like what we talked about. I won't name the brand. You have to go listen to the episode when it comes out to figure out which one it is.
Hmm.
But basically, what they were saying is like they didn't want the word sponsorship anywhere on the podcast. You know how sometimes you listen to a podcast episode and they're like, this episode is sponsored by da da da. They're like, we don't
Mhm.
want that. If you're going to use any words, we want it to say like partnership or collaboration. And they were really trying to steer away from the sponsorship because obviously the word sponsorship is like, we're paying you to do XYZ. But partnership or collaboration sounds a lot more like we are
Working
intentionally,
together.
exactly, we're intentionally coming together
This is
to
not an ad. This is a
exactly.
friendship. We're just
Exactly.
chummy. Ooh,
Yes. You're
gross.
not paying me to do this. I'm just doing this because I want to. No. So
Okay.
that's the vibe that they want it to come across as. And I think that's specific to this brand that I was talking to. But I'm pretty sure if you talk to any brand, they'll say the same thing of like, they don't want it to sound like they're paying you to sell this. They want you to have, and with them specifically, I have used their product and service and I
Mhm.
have actually like enjoyed it and would use it again. And I think they're great. So it works out in that way because I know about them already and I've used them. That's what they want it to look and sound like of this is my personal experience with them and this is my good personal experience with them. And it doesn't feel and sound forced. So with
Right.
podcasting specifically, it's not like, here's why you should use
Yeah.
this product. Here's is
Yeah.
why it's the best product. No, this is my, we as people, like we connect to stories. That's why podcasting does so well. That's why we love movies. We connect to other people's stories. So if I sit here on the podcast and share like the ad is why I had such a good experience and like why they were great for me and why they were so impactful for me, there's going to be some pain points in me sharing my
Mhm.
experience that someone else listening is going to have and then go over there. And so that's just to pull back the curtain on like the meeting I had. They were literally like, we don't want it to sound like an ad. We don't want it to say sponsorships. If you do have to say anything related to that word, use partnerships, use collaboration, and just go all in with your own experience and really highlight that and make that the focal point of the ad, quote unquote, because we want it to sound natural and like you enjoy using us and not like you're being paid to do this.
That's crazy and amazing. Is there anything else from this brand convo that you were like surprised by or were like, oh, okay, that was crazy? Or that you have a bone to pick with?
Not necessarily a bone to pick with. It was just highlighting for me that brands, travel brands, and other brands are starting to tap into the podcasting market more.
Mm.
Because this is, to me, a pretty well known company within the travel space. And they're just starting to do podcast marketing. They're like, this is, and I don't know how much of this I'm allowed to say. They're like, we're just starting to do podcast campaigns. Like, that's not really something we've ever done before. We're like
Mhm.
dabbling in it. And so I think for brands in general, they're starting to realize the value of a podcast community, starting to realize the value of podcasting and not just like YouTube or not just social
Yeah.
media. And so that felt really cool, not like a bone to pick, but definitely felt really cool to be like, okay, podcasting is now more and more becoming recognized as a space. And obviously, we've seen with like other bigger brands, but now also smaller brands are seeing the value in a listening community and starting to venture more into paying people to work in that space. So I think that
Yay.
was an additional cool thing to take away from it of this is starting to open up more to
Mm-hmm.
podcasters. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I love that. Yay for podcasting.
Yay. Yes.
Yay.
And it's not always, I think, too, a lot of people with podcasting can get stuck on, oh, I don't have the download numbers or I don't have the audience or da da da, because on a bigger scale, it's so a CPM model is used. And if you
Okay.
don't know what that means, it's like a cost per mil or cost per thousand. So people are getting paid on bigger with like hundreds of thousands or like millions of downloads are getting paid on a CPM basis, which is like a set, let's say like $25 for every 1,000 downloads for that ad. And it's very like metrics based. But I think that's a lot harder when you're a indie creator, indie podcaster, smaller creators who have decent download numbers, but obviously nothing compared that can be really used on a CPM basis. So they're more looking for your niche. Like they know you've built a relationship with your listeners. They know that you've, yeah, basically they know you have a relationship with your listeners and they're looking to tap into that more than they are looking for hundreds of thousands of downloads.
Mm.
And I think that's something that's important to keep in mind because I think people are like, I don't have the downloads to pitch sponsors. And it's like, well, what niche do you have? Like, how specific, how diehard are your listeners? Are they coming back every week? Are you getting comments from them on Instagram? If that's the case, then yes, you have an audience that like some brand would want to tap into. It's just a matter of finding that brand.
Now, if you want even more clarity on podcasting and how the heck to make any sort of cash from it, I highly recommend one of my very early episodes of this show with Marie, who was actually my own podcast producer and made me drag my ass, my sick ass, out to the car right now to sit on the street like an FBI agent and get you this episode this week because I wasn't going to do it. I'm not going to lie. And here we are. But if you want even more information on how to grow as a podcast and even, someone's walking by looking at me. Okay. But if you want even more information on, oh no, if you've ever asked, I'm delusional. If you've ever asked, should I start a podcast? Are podcasts even worth it for me? I highly recommend going to listen to that episode with Marie. Now, I also think that the more you niche, some of you will hate me for this, and I don't blame you. I think that sponsorships and brands are much more likely to come and work with you, even if you have a smaller audience, but your audience is pretty niche, okay? Because if you're like, hey, I'm going to go be an influencer for home goods, not the store, but like lifestyle, it's like cool. But what does that mean? Are you an influencer for like cleaning? Are you an influencer for beauty? What's the thing here? Brands are much more likely to pour their money into creators who have a clear identity. And I'm not saying this to pigeonhole you, but I'm saying this to give you some guidance to look at your posting schedule and your content to pick a direction, a general direction, and head that way.
Did you go to them or did they find you?
They found me.
That's gotta feel so good.
It does. It was actually through a connection, like through a network, which I think is another thing of like circling back to the community when people know you and you know them and they know what you do and they know that you're good at it or that you're consistent or that your name is in those spaces, they're going to think of you and connect you. And so I have a friend who I didn't even know worked for this company, but I'd reached out to her about something else travel related. And then we were just catching up and she was like, actually, can I connect you with this person at my company? She's looking for questions about podcasting. And I'm like, okay, I work in podcasting. I'm a freelance podcaster. I can answer your questions. She wasn't even expecting for them to reach out to me in this capacity. And I got the email and I was like, oh, sick. And I'd reached out to the friend and she was like, oh, I didn't give her your contact for that, but I'm honestly not surprised because you're exactly what we're looking for in terms of the niche. So yeah, they reached out to me, which was nice. And that does feel good to be like, oh, they looked at my content and were like, yeah, we want to work with you. And I was like, ooh, we love that feeling.
Yeah, I love that. What do you recommend or tell your clients to do when they are
finding podcasts to go on
Mm.
because a lot of travel creators don't have podcasts. Of course, there are a million, but a lot of them don't. But they're still great opportunities to be guests on. And that's
Yeah.
also not something I necessarily even thought about. I didn't even think about podcasting from the perspective of you can be a guest without being on a having a podcast.
Mhm.
Hello, obviously,
Yes.
but it just wasn't even like a thought of, oh, duh, you can just go hop on. You don't have to have a show. And I think it would do wonders for a lot of these creators who do have such specific audiences and have not hopped on the podcast train yet.
Yeah.
What would you tell them about going to search for shows to be on?
That's such a good question. I love this. Okay. First of all, I think it's a whole community, a whole space that you're not tapping into if you're not doing it. It's hard to collaborate with other content creators through social media, and podcasting allows for that collaboration. So it's like a way for you to build community by getting to connect with other people. It puts you in those spaces. It sets you up as like a knowledgeable person. Someone wants to have you on an interview. That means that you have something to say and to share. And so it's whoever's listening is going to see you as that expert and then want to go back to your content. So that's just some of the reasons why you should. There's others. But in terms of how to find and then how to pitch, I'll answer as like two separate questions.
Yay.
How to find, I think it's based on not just your niche. So it's say, for example, me, I'm a queer content creator, queer travel content creator. So finding other like queer specific shows, and even if they're not travel related, but tapping into that like queer, because everyone travels. So even if you're not specifically a backpacker or like a digital nomad, if you're a queer person, you also travel. So like maybe those tips would be helpful for you.
Yeah.
So kind of laying out like what your specific niche is and looking for not just shows that fit like your full digital nomad budget backpacker niche, but like other sections or sectors of your niche is really helpful as long as it like aligns, but it doesn't have to be like, oh, this is only queer. It doesn't fit my niche fully. Like I won't go
Right.
on that show. No, tap into all those subsets of your niche, all those subsets of your community.
Even if you don't have a podcast, I need you to realize that you are a creator who knows what you're doing. And that is enough to be a guest on somebody else's show. A lot of people who I ask to be on my show kind of freak out. Not Dianni, though, I will say. Not Dianni. But they kind of are a little bit hesitant because they're like, well, I don't know anything about being a travel creator. And I'm like, you don't have to know anything about being a travel creator. That's my job. It's my job to interpret what my guest is saying to you in a way that is applicable to the niche of the show. So your job as a guest is to come on to anybody's show, really, and share your expertise. And then it should be the host who takes your expertise and makes it relatable to your audience or guides the questions in the conversation to be relevant to you. And I think a lot of people approach podcasting as more interview style, where I approach it as like, hey, I think you're freaking cool and I want you to be on my podcast because I think you have something valuable to say to this community and I want to get to know you more. Like I wouldn't have known Dianni if I didn't ask her to be on my show. And it is so fun. And she is so freaking awesome. And it's just one more awesome person that you get to meet and know and connect with. And it's so valuable. So if you are not investing time into searching how to become a guest on somebody else's podcast, I really think you should start doing that. Make that a goal. Just try. And hell, you're listening to a podcast right now and you're probably a creator. Do you want to be a guest on it? If you want to be a guest on the show, send me a DM. You know where to find me by now. And I would love to see what expertise we can grab out of you because we all have it, even if you think you don't. But I would try and make it a goal of yours to guest on a podcast or at least pitch guesting on to a podcast. Do not forget AI can help you. There are so many resources out there to look up pitching best practices to get yourself on other people's shows.
And in terms of finding, there are like Facebook groups. There is this one. I'm actually have the tab open right now. Tink Media is a podcast marketing company and they have a podcast promo swap list. So you could probably go on and find shows on there that are looking to like have guests on. Maybe you don't have a show to swap with them with, But if you did, it'll have their information on it and you could reach out. And this leads into more of the pitching aspect. Reach out with number one, always what value you have to provide to their audience. That's always going to be the number one thing. It's not like, this is my story and why you should have me on. Everyone they have on. Yeah.
Boo.
Everyone you have on has a story. Everyone, what I've learned through podcasting, literally everyone and their mother has a story. Everyone's got a story. And it's probably a great story. And like you, amazing. But what value are you providing to my audience? And the way to know what value you need to provide to their audience is knowing what their audience is. So do not pitch a show without having listened to that show, having done some research, go through their social media, find something that connects you to them that you can be like, hey, I listened to episode and you talked about this and I totally relate to that, because find a way to connect. First and foremost. We're humans, community connection. That's always going to be the go-to. And don't just start a pitch with, this is why you should have me on. You know what I mean? Find a way to connect to them. And people are going to appreciate, one, that you did that research, that you went and took the time to listen to episodes further back, or you went and you're like, I stalked your social media account. Like, go through and find a way to connect to them. And then to talk about what value you want to add to their community. Maybe I'm going to just keep using the queer example. Maybe they are a queer podcast, and it's like you've traveled to X amount of countries as a queer person and you have a ton of tips, or like best cities to travel to, or best places to celebrate Pride around you know what I mean? You have value to add. And honestly, if you're like, oh, I found this podcast and I'm looking to get in front of new communities, but you don't have value to add to that community, don't pitch them. Just leave them alone. Just leave them alone, because it's not worth it for them. It's not worth it for you. And so that's going to always be the biggest thing of, I want to over deliver on value when I get onto this episode. So that way, one, the host is, oh my goodness, like they did such a good job and they gave so many tips, but also so the listener thinks that too. And they're not just like, yeah, of course, aspects of your story are going to come into play, but you want to teach them some things. So I think those would be my two biggest tips for sending a pitch: is do your research, find shows and ways that you relate to the host and highlight those things, and then figure out what value you can add, and in your pitch include the value that you can add to their audience.
That's so good. So obvious, yet good.
So I feel like these are things that are no-brainers, but I've received pitches before to be on my podcast from men.
Oh no.
Where it's like,
stop there.
Yeah, exactly. And I reiterate all over my social media, it's for the girlies. I only interview women. If you went and looked through any of my episodes, I have only interviewed women on my show, and I only interview women. So you having pitched me as a man is like,
they're not helping themselves, are they?
You've done zero research. You've literally not helping yourself. You've done zero research. You don't know anything about the premise of my show. Like, all of these things, which obviously, like you said, would be no-brainers, but I think some people don't think about these things, and they just think, oh, I can get in front of their audience. And I'm like, yeah, but no, you can't, because this is not an audience for you. And also, I think as the person coming on, the guest too, it doesn't make sense to want to get in front of an audience of listeners that like aren't for you. So say I was like, yeah, sure, let me have this guy on. My listeners aren't going to connect with you. It's
not helping them at all.
No, it's not going to help you in the long run. It's not going to do anything for you because you didn't take the time to do your research.
Right. And you can clearly tell that these men were like batch emailing so many people, and like, fine, fair, you can do this. But have a freaking spreadsheet or something where you have a notes tab or like a notes section where, like, at least try. I love that you can do it all at one time, but oh my God.
But it's not going to get you any, like, maybe it'll get you on a few shows. Like, you know what? There's a possibility. But I think if you're trying to go beyond just let me get on this show and like actually build and connect to their audience, that's the whole point, is you have to do a little bit more work, and it's going to maybe take more time, but like it'll be more worth it, I believe.
Okay. What are your thoughts on this idea? What if someone was like, okay, I'm a luxury travel creator and I want to be on somebody's podcast. I'm going to open Spotify or Apple or whatever I listen to and type in travel or like luxury and see what shows come up. What makes me have questions about this strategy for being a guest is that the shows that come up at the top are massive. And it's, are you, I don't want to say wasting your time, but it just might be a lot harder to get on those than it is to, like you say, do more thorough research
Yeah.
to find shows that are actually more specific to your niche.
Yeah, 100%. There are ways to find other shows that are smaller that would be within your niche. I think even sometimes using social media, you have a bit of a higher chance of finding ones that are smaller indie creators. And unfortunately, we live in a world where it's like a bigger creator, like a bigger show like that's going to look at your Instagram follower account and be like, they're probably
Mm-hmm.
only having shows of their caliber on, which not for nothing, I don't say don't pitch. I think you should always shoot your shot if you feel like you have a really great angle or you have a really great message that you think would really connect with their audience and you've loved the show and listened to it for so long and like say it's a show about digital nomads and it's a really big show and you've used that show to get where you are as a digital nomad. You would be like a great case study or example for them in that show and maybe you could pitch it from that angle. You get what I'm saying? Where it's that would maybe be a good position to get you on the show and maybe they take you up on that because it's like this person has listened, this person has utilized the things that I've been teaching all these months or years that they've been listening. And so I think if you can find the right angle to pitch it from, definitely give it a shot, but you're going to have a better chance with smaller shows. I think Listen Notes is one website that you can look on to find some shows. I, as a like behind the scenes travel freelance person, I use Rephonic, but it's kind of a paid thing, so it's a little bit more expensive. So people probably aren't gonna go on there looking. But Listen Notes might be a good place to start, and then social media as well. And my last resort would be like just opening Apple Podcasts and
Yeah.
scrolling through because the first ones are, like you said, going to be bigger shows.
Mm-hmm.
But I honestly try socials a bit and see what comes up and
Yeah.
take some time to do some stalking. There's also like always communities for this of people who are looking to have guests on. So Facebook groups are places that you'll be able to utilize as
Yeah.
well. Like I mentioned, the Tink Media, like Podcast Swap. Threads, I'm new to Threads, and they've got like a thriving podcast community over there as
Really?
well. Yeah, I'm noticing. So maybe like finding other social media platforms outside of the ones that are just like video based. I think Threads is a lot more community based. And
Weird.
yeah,
Interesting.
I've been liking it's been like a week, but I've been liking Threads. And honestly, I've had a lot of people recommend it to me for podcasting, for finding people to swap
Oh,
with, finding shows to guest on. And I know it can be like, who the fuck wants to join another social media platform?
yeah.
But it doesn't feel like it. It feels like a place where people just dump their thoughts and ideas and
Okay.
a lot more genuinely connect. So Threads might also be a great place of finding some other podcasters to connect with or podcasts to guest on potentially as well. So
Interesting.
thinking outside the box of where you search a little bit can be helpful sometimes.
Mm. Okay, my last question for you, or at least this might spark some thoughts for you. Many moons ago, when you submitted my podcast form, you had mentioned that one of the best things you did for your content is to not really make any when you weren't feeling creative, if you remember.
I do.
I believe in this so much. Was there like a specific time when you were trying to create content and you're like, actually, this is stupid. I'm just gonna wait until I feel like it?
It depends on what your goal is with your social media. I guess I could
Mm-hmm.
say that. Because if you're looking to grow and consistency is always going to be the thing, and like stopping creating is obviously the opposite of consistency, and you can come back and see the effects of not being consistent. That's definitely a thing, and be like, why, oh, this person's grown and I haven't, and you can get stuck into that. But to talk about what you said, I guess those are some of the like cons of not. But to me, with social media, I don't make all of my money from like collaborations and things like that. I've done like UGC content and stuff like that, and that can be a part of my income. But the main bulk of my income is my freelance, like is my clients, is that work. So I don't depend on it in that way as my source of income. And it is a creative outlet. It is, I'm going through this or I'm feeling this. Let me put this out there. And those are the things that connect the best with my audience when I'm being super vulnerable. And sometimes you're not in that place to share those things
Mm-hmm.
or to share anything at all. You're like,
Yeah.
I don't want to spend 2 hours editing one reel right now. It's just not what I'm up for. So I think if you're not feeling it, don't, honestly. Like, if it's supposed to be a fun thing, if you're forcing yourself to do it, it's going to come from this kind of like icky place. I was end of last year, beginning of this year, depressed for a while and was just like stopped creating. I like couldn't find it in me
Yeah.
to create anything. It wasn't sparking joy in the way that it was before. So
Yeah.
I had just stopped. And I hit a point eventually where like I missed it. Like it was my creative outlet. And I hit that point where I was like, oh, like I miss interviewing or I miss creating TikToks and stuff like that. So I started. And as you start getting the ball rolling, the excitement for it and the like energy for it and the ideas start to flow and come back again. But I think it's fine to give yourself that time and space to not. And then to go hand in hand with that, if you are like, hey, I do still want to create, but I'm not feeling up for it, but I don't want to lose out on my community or whatever, find what like the lowest lift content that you
Yeah.
can create is. Of maybe it's like repurposing older stuff that you've used, or maybe you have a podcast and maybe you could go into Riverside or wherever and pull out some more clips and reuse those. Or maybe it's just like videos with like text on it and it's like a 10-second video. You know what I mean? Finding ways. It doesn't have to be like 2 hour long videos that take you to edit about like, this is a day in my life. And I know you're pulling a bunch of clips from from your photos and like doing all the things. Finding the way to make it the lowest lift possible. It's still creating. Maybe you're not posting as often. Maybe you're usually posting 5 days a week and now it's two or even one. It doesn't have to be every day. It doesn't have to be the best possible content every day. We're human. And I think that vulnerability, if you're not in that place, honestly does really well too. People want to see that side of you. We know we're not machines. So if you're able to be like, this is what I'm going through and real with your followers and listeners, people resonate with that. Like back to the same thing, like we connect to stories and be like,
Mm-hmm.
also, damn, I've been feeling that same way too. So remember that you're human. And if you're not feeling up for creating, it's okay. And then there are lower lift ways to continue to
Mm-hmm.
create.
Newsflash, my friends, your audience can tell when you're creating content just to create content and get it out. They can tell when you're not really feeling it and not really into it. And one way I would give you advice to make sure you're only creating content in a good headspace and a place when you're feeling motivated and inspired is to take note of when you do your best work. What time of day do you do your best work? And to prioritize doing your content during those times of day, because then you're on. Because if you're trying to do it like late at night or something, you're like, I'm not feeling inspired. This is not something I want to do now. So I'm just going to like slap this thing together and like kind of half-ass it. No, it is so much better to have less, but whoa. I just ate a shit ton of yogurt again, Marie. It's way better to have less content that is of higher quality than a lot of content that is of shitty quality. And I know you know that. Oh my God, someone else is walking towards me. This is bananas. Oh my God, Marie just texted me. She sent an audio message. Let's see what she says.
That's fucking brilliant. Please do that. But you have to really do good acting. Like, you're like, oh, this is... And people are like, oh my God, they're getting married. This is the content I want to see.
Spoiler alert. Spoiler alert to something coming.
Is there anything else you just want to say that you're like, if I can say this, I will be happy? And if not, that's great.
The travel content creating stuff can be like a slippery place. I think a lot of comparison can come into play in your mind, and this person grew this fast and I haven't grown as fast, or this person got this many, and like really get into that place. And as someone who like gets in that place all the time, I guess the only thing that I want to leave you with is try hard to pull yourself out of that place and not get to that place. And
Don't do
whatever,
it.
like, yeah, don't do it. Like mantras are really helpful for me because if I see the thoughts happening on repeat in my head, if I have a mantra to grab onto to like reiterate, is helpful. So coming up with I'm on my own journey, like I'm exactly where I'm at, whatever it is that's going to help you of not getting into that place. Cause I think that's social media has so many great aspects. And of course it has awful aspects, but it has so many great aspects. And to lose out on those great aspects because you're busy comparing yourself to other people, it's not gonna be enjoyable. You're gonna get yourself into a bad place.
Yeah.
Don't do that. Don't do it.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. You have all the people who do, oh man, sometimes I'm like the career path I've chosen. Like, why?
Yes.
I know why, but like, why? I like to suffer, I think, really is the answer. Where do you want people to find you?
You can come hang out with me on my podcast while she's away. I already told you what it's all about. So
It's not for men. Go
it's
away. Stop
it is
listening.
not for men. It's for women who want to travel, who want to learn how to become digital nomads, who want a budget backpack, who are queer, who want to just, I don't know, see more of the world and have a fun life. Yeah, come hang out. And there's also Instagram and TikTok at While She's Away pod on Instagram, While She's Away on TikTok. And those are the places I hang out. So come hang out with me.
Amazing. Yay. Thank you. That was so fun. But that was so good. There's so many bits of advice that I think will be so helpful to so many creators at different stages of their creation journey. I have so many notes, but I can't wait to share with them. So it'll be so good.
Oh my gosh, you guys. That was so good. Oh my gosh. Dianni is freaking amazing. I'll have Dianni's Instagram linked in the show notes. You can go check out everything in her world. Highly recommend. She's just an awesome human. I hope you liked today's episode. As always, come DM me on Instagram at Travel Content Writing. Happy creating. I'll see you next week. Marie, I'm literally recording this in my car in a neighborhood. Oh my God. Oh my God, Marie, someone just pulled up behind me and they don't know I'm in my car. Oh my God, this is terrifying. I don't want to scare the shit out of them. I feel like an FBI van right now, like for real. Somebody pulled up behind me and they don't think anybody is in this car right now. The things I do for this podcast.